Hi, I'm Jane, and I have a story that's quite unbelievable about my own crazy parents. So crazy that I cut ties with them, and for a good reason. And before anyone's like, wait, that's way too drastic. Why did you cut ties with your family? Well, you may ask that. But before I get too much into reason, I will give you a brief backstory about my childhood was like. Being the only child in my family, both my parents were devoted Christians. I was raised about the same values of Christianity, and I'm still a devoted Christian today. My family always went to church on the Sundays, and we always took part of the church Christians events. As I was getting older, I learned more about Christianity and eventually about other religions. I was surprised to learn how many different religions there were in the world, and some of them actually had some similarities to Christianity. Even when I talked about them at home, sometimes during dinner or even just brought it up, my parents, that was nice to learn and always change the topic. At first, I didn't seem there was any problem with that, but it all eventually changed sometime much later on. During my senior year of high school, I started dating this guy named Ryan. Even though Ryan wasn't any even religious guy, he was actually an atheist. But I actually accepted him fully, and I was like, everyone has the right to choose what to believe in. If they want to be a Christian or even be even part of any religion. At first, my parents loved him. They were happy that I had found a boyfriend. But then it all changed. This is how my story starts about my relationship with Ryan and my parents' thoughts about him. It all happened on my 19th birthday. My mom actually invited Ryan to our home to celebrate my 19th birthday, just the four of us. But then it all happened with my mom asking him a simple question. So, Ryan, we had never seen you in church or your family. Oh, it's actually a good reason for that. My family is actually atheist, which meaning that his family didn't even follow any religion. But I do in fact respect other religions, he said. That answer shocked my parents, but they acted normally. It wasn't until after he had left when my parents had me sit down on the couch in the living room and have a serious conversation. Sweetie, you had to break up with Ryan, said my mom. What? Why? I mean, he's a great guy. You said him yourself, and you love him. Even you said that he's a good potential husband for me one day. But then, my dad said with a firm tone, that was until we learned that he and his family are atheists. They don't share the same values of Christian faith as us. You should leave him right instant. My family, especially my parents, looked down on him. It turns out they look down on other people just because they aren't even Christians. I was in shock. I couldn't even believe my own parents' words, but I refused to accept it. I said, why would I even do that? Ryan is my first official boyfriend. And we have been happy for a year. We didn't even had talked to live together anyway. And that was crazy. But then my parents said no and to leave Ryan. They were upset, but they didn't say anything else. Even after that, that same evening, I even called my best friend Vanessa. She was my best friend since elementary. We were always close. And when I told her or my family told me about Ryan, she was equally in shock. Your parents are insane. I mean, you and Ryan are so good together. Yeah, exactly, I said back. I can't understand my family. I mean, even when I first met him, they welcomed him with open arms and like even accepted him as part of the family. I mean, this is this is unbelievable. I couldn't even believe that my own family would even lower this, well, it's go this low. But then it all happened something else, something I didn't expect my family even to do. A few days later, when I came home from my part-time job, my mom was home. She said, "Sweetie, I had something to show you." Then she showed me a photo of a young man, same age, and I immediately recognized him. He was a son of to to my parents' friend, and his name was Tobias. Sure, he was quite handsome, but I had no intention to leave Ryan to be with Tobias. When I told my mom about it, she told me to consider it since Tobias' family is Christians themselves. And I knew that for a fact, since we go to the same church, and they were wealthy too. But that was then when I realized my parents had hoped that I would marry into Tobias' rich family so their own future could have been secured. And I still have no intention to do that again. But it was she decided. Well, at least my family decided this was going to happen. But since Ryan already lived in a small house that he had inherited from his grandmother, I decided to move in. A week later, when my parents was out of town, I decided to act. I had 3 days on me since they left on Thursday. I called for Vanessa and her two older brothers, and of course even Ryan. It took us a day to move all the belongings I wanted to move to my new home with Ryan. And some may think this is way too drastic. You cannot really have a serious conversation with your family to talk about it. But I say this, it was beyond even reasonable. So after that, I left a note on the counter in the kitchen and said, "Mom, Dad, when you read this, I have moved in with Ryan and I have no intention of marrying Tobias. I have talked to him about it, and he has no plans about it either since he is already engaged. You can't change my mind, and if you want to disown me, then it's fine. At least Ryan is my future, since we are officially engaged. We actually got engaged just shortly before my 19th birthday. I never told you about it, but I was planning to do so. Signed, Jane." For the next few days, it was silent. But a few days after my parents got home, my phone blew up with texts and calls from my parents. I just ignored at first. They told me again, and the minute I moved back, and that Ryan is not the right one for me, that he is manipulating my mind, and that he is abusing my mind. But then I had enough. I said to my mom only 4 words: I disown you too. Then I ended the call, blocked both my parents' numbers. Since then, I hadn't even heard anything from my parents, since they were quite in shock. And a year later, I actually had a small wedding in the backyard of our new home, well, at Ryan's home, and I didn't invite my parents since I disowned them, and I have no intention to get myself involved with them anymore. I only invited Vanessa as my maid of honor, her two brothers, and her parents, and of course, even Tobias even actually invited them since we actually get very close as friends only. Even Ryan's family was also invited. Then, a year after we got married, me and Ryan actually welcomed our first child, a daughter that we named Allison. And I was quite happy of my new life. And before anyone asks, do I ever regret to cut ties with my own parents? The answer is no, I really don't. But I still remember the time when I was a child with my family, how the good times we had, the the vacations, and the holidays. Sure, I treasure them as much. I really had hoped that eventually my parents could to accept Ryan, but no. It happened from time to time that I'd drive by my old childhood home. But eventually one day there was a sold sign outside the home. Turns out my parents had moved to a different part of the city, but they had never even seen or met my own daughter. So no, I don't regret to cut ties with my own family. So yes, and this is my story how this all happened. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you.